All right. Good morning, guys. My name is Dr. Rachel Moore. I am here this morning to talk about labor. And more specifically, I'm here to talk about pain in labor. So, when we're talking about pain in labor, I think that there is just a lot of not confusion, but a culture of avoidance of pain. And what stemmed this Instagram live or PT on Ice podcast episode came from a Instagram post that I saw the other day while I was scrolling. So it was a random birth account that I follow on my business page. And I saw this post, and it was essentially about how the discomfort of pregnancy prepares us for the discomfort of birth, and the discomfort of birth prepares us for the process and discomfort of motherhood. And I am a mom of two kiddos, and I've had one medicated delivery, one unmedicated delivery. And this just really spoke to me. In particular, there was a slide on that carousel post that said the point is the pain. The point is allowing it to be there for all that it is. The point is to let the discomfort be your teacher, to let it work for you, and to allow it to move you. I think as PTs, we have this knee-jerk reaction to almost immediately get rid of pain, right? Like we feel like our goal is to help people not be in pain. And that makes sense because in so many other realms of life, that is the case. And as a society as a whole, we are very uncomfortable with being uncomfortable. Those of us that are maybe in like the functional fitness space where we push ourselves, that's kind of like a catchphrase, right? Like get uncomfortable being uncomfortable, and that pushing into that discomfort because it really opens up this entire opportunity for growth. And growth happens in those periods of discomfort. In the birth space, there's that huge emphasis on pain-free birth. So we see this whether that is a medicated delivery with the use of an epidural or any other medications. But even in the unmedicated delivery space, there's this huge emphasis on like ways to achieve an unmedicated pain-free birth, whether that is through meditation or whatever route we find. The goal is this be all end all platform of pain-free birth. What I want to talk about this morning is maybe finding ways that we can reframe this, right? Like, what if instead of trying to eliminate the pain, we learned ways that we could manage the pain? Maybe instead of trying to avoid the pain, we focus and prepare for expecting the pain and all of the ways that we can use that pain as a way to grow through that process. This reframe can be really powerful. Educating our patients that pain does not equal suffering. We know that pain is going to happen in labor and in delivery. It is an inevitable piece of the puzzle, but suffering doesn't have to be. Plan that discomfort is going to be a part of that journey, and then have tools in the toolbox to manage it so that it is at a level that you can work through. So that's what we're going to unpack now. We're going to talk about ways that we can help our patients learn to manage our pain. We've talked quite a bit about birth prep visits on this podcast. We've had other episodes with other faculty that dive into that. So we're not going to encompass the entire birth prep visit today. What we're really going to focus in on are tools that we can give our patients and things that we can immediately practice within session that they can have on board for labor so that they have this easy to access avenue in order to manage their pain. Like I said earlier, one of the big pieces of this is that reframe. It's understanding that pain is a piece of the puzzle. Pain in labor is actually productive. And that seems so weird to say, but when we have these surges of pain in labor, our body naturally releases endorphins. And those endorphins help us manage that increasing intensity of labor as it builds. This is the hard part about like an induction and getting artificial oxytocin on board and having those contractions go from like 0 to 100 is our body doesn't have that time to naturally build up its reserve of endorphins along that way. So pain in labor is a productive piece of the puzzle. We want to know how to manage it though, so that pain is not the same as suffering and that we're not advocating that our patients should be suffering through their labor. So we're going to break down a few different things that we can educate on and then wrap up with one big mindset shift. So the first thing that we can discuss with our patients is movement and also changing positions in general. Position changes in labor can be really powerful. There are multiple positions that we can labor in labor, and each one kind of has its own benefits. So if we think about like standing positions, the benefit of standing positions is we've got gravity helping baby facilitate their way down through that birth canal, but we also have a lot of freedom of movement. We can walk, we can hip sway, we can dance, whatever it is. In an upright standing position, it's a little bit easier to access that mobility piece of the puzzle. A caveat with this is we don't want somebody on their feet the entire time they're in labor, because somebody might be in labor for 24 hours and we don't want them exhausted by the time they get to pushing because they spent all of those hours on their feet because they thought that that was the most productive position that they could be in. So I typically recommend within my birth prep visits that we alternate maybe more active positions, quote unquote, like an upright moving position with a more restful position, something like a seated or a hands and knees position. The benefit of the seated positions for labor is we get that gravity enhancement of being in that upright position, but we're able to rest a little bit, right? Like we're taking a load off of our feet. We can get into different positions, whether that is a partner supported sit or a sit on a birth ball or a sit on a chair or a toilet facing backwards. A lot of different ways that we can find that support and still get that upright gravity dependent position to help baby kind of put that pressure down on cervix and in theory help progress labor along. The nice thing about the seated positions too is there's a lot of opportunity for counter pressure here. So partner can get in, do hip squeezes, do sacral pressures, which we'll dive into in a second, to help alleviate some of that discomfort during the contractions themselves. So seated positions can be a really nice way to get the facilitation of upright with gravity while also getting a little bit of rest and kind of taking a break. Hands and knees positions can be really impactful as well, in particular if somebody is having back labor. A big reason for this is a lot of times back labor is associated with like what's called a sunny side up baby, which means baby's face is facing mom's belly button and their heaviest part is their spine. And so their little spines are kind of resting on mom's spine, and that can just cause a lot of discomfort in the back. We want baby in that belly button towards backside position so that as baby is delivered, the crown of their head is that smallest part that's coming out. That is the easiest way to deliver a baby in a quote unquote ideal position. So if somebody is having back pain or a lot of intense back discomfort in labor, the hands and knees position, one, gives their back a break, right? Like it's just anytime we have discomfort in the back, getting in that position could just kind of alleviate some of that discomfort in and of itself. But also it gives baby a lot of room to then kind of float and flip around and allow uterus to help facilitate that rotation that naturally occurs in labor so that mom can get relief from that potential increased discomfort on her back, and also baby can get into a more optimal position with those contractions of the uterus. Again, just like in seated, lots of opportunities on hands and knees for partner support with counter pressure and also a very restful position. I personally quite literally napped when I was in labor with my son on my birth ball in my hands and knees in between contractions. So I had my head on my birth ball. I would fall asleep in between contractions. I would wake up for a contraction, get through it, and then fall immediately right back asleep because I was really tired by that point. So really nice way to encourage rest in labor as well. Aside from the actual positions we're in and of themselves, encouraging movement can be really helpful, not only to facilitate the process of labor as we're moving positions, it gives baby a little bit more opportunity to access kind of other areas and just kind of get their way down through the birth canal, but also listening to our body in positions that feel uncomfortable and changing them can help our body get into a more optimal position for the continuation and progression of labor. So encouraging movement as much as possible. Even in our moms that have epidurals, a lot of hospitals now are becoming more movement friendly. So even with an epidural, you can have a walking epidural, which allows a lot more movement in and of itself. But even if you don't have that walking epidural, having a conversation with nursing staff or hospital staff ahead of time and asking like, are you going to come in and help change my positions, or advocating for those position changes every hour to 2 hours? I'd like to be changed into a different position so that we can get that similar mechanism that we would get if we were able to move on our own. I've mentioned counter pressure a couple of times. Counter pressure is a pretty popular pain management strategy in labor. And what it is it's applying a counter pressure to the pelvis during a contraction to alleviate that discomfort. There are three main ways that we can do this. And I'm going to stand up. And if you're watching live, you'll be able to kind of see where my hands go. If you're not watching live and you're listening, I'll kind of walk through the hand position. So the first one is going to be like a pelvic one. So hands on either side of the pelvis and applying a medially directed force. So kind of on iliac crest, squeezing together to get that approximation on the pelvis itself. Another popular one that we see used quite frequently is a sacral pressure. It's really similar to that iliac one. The difference is we're going central to sacrum. And this is kind of weird to show on myself, but if there was a second person, it's a little bit easier. So heel of the hand goes on the sacrum and applies that counter pressure as well during the contraction. There is a large range of that sacrum, right? Like there's a upper part, a superior part of the sacrum, and an inferior part. So depending on where mom is in labor, she may want that pressure in a different position. There's no hard and fast rule. If you're earlier in labor versus later in labor, you should go here versus here. But just knowing that if somebody does counter pressure on one spot, it doesn't feel super great, you can explore with moving down a little bit maybe and finding a spot that is a little bit more comfortable or pain relieving. These are great to practice in pregnancy because they also alleviate some discomfort in pregnancy. So if you want to be a partner of the year, you want your patients' partners to feel like partner of the year, encouraging that practice ahead of time is great for the partner's mechanics to know what it is that they're doing when it's go time, for the patient to get an idea of what feels good to them, and also to get the benefit of just feeling good in pregnancy as well. We love that for them. The final one that I think is a little bit lesser known is an approximation of the femur. So this is patient is seated with their feet planted on the floor. This is one that I can't really show. So seated, feet planted on the floor, partner or birth support person is going to get in front, kneel in front of them and push their femurs and approximate them into the pelvis. So if we're thinking pelvis or acetabulum, femur, patient is seated, right? So their tibias would be here. The partner is going to push at the knees and approximate into the femur to apply that counter pressure during a contraction. This one is done in seated, ensuring that the person that is birthing is not sitting on a birth ball, so you don't fling them backwards, but seated in a chair, on the edge of the bed, on the side of a tub. Any of those positions is really great and really lovely. Counter pressures are a really fantastic way for maybe partner to get involved in birth. And one of the things that we love in birth is that partner involvement and that feeling of like lovey happiness, because that releases oxytocin, and oxytocin is what triggers the uterine contractions, and uterine contractions are what progress that labor along. So if we can get that oxytocin released, if we can maybe incorporate a counter pressure with a standing position where person birthing is hanging on partner, partner has their hands on person's hips, we're nice and close, maybe we're doing some hip sways, it's like the middle school dance, and partner can also apply counter pressure. All of those kind of layer in on top of each other to just be a really positive and beautiful sensation and alleviation of some discomfort in labor. Another option for pain management is water immersion. This doesn't necessarily have to be in a tub. So if a patient doesn't have access to a tub, whether they don't have a tub in their house or maybe their hospital doesn't have a tub, even being in a shower, so seated maybe on a birth ball in a shower with water hitting the patient's back or body in some way, still has evidence to support it from a endorphin release standpoint. Also muscle relaxation. So that nice warm water is very soothing from a muscular standpoint. We want to facilitate relaxation in birth rather than this like fight or flight heightened response. So anything we can do to help facilitate that is really beneficial and really powerful. Massage is another piece of the puzzle that we can utilize when it comes to managing pain or decreasing pain in labor. There's kind of two routes here, right? So we think when it comes to pain management, we've got two main theories. We've got the gate control theory, where things are just kind of bypassing and getting to the brain sooner than that other stimuli. We also have the noxious stimuli theory. We can use massage as a great example of how one therapeutic intervention can be utilized two different ways. So we can either do gate control theory, nice, loving, relaxing massage, before a contraction for relaxation, but during a contraction, again, to kind of bypass, maybe it's a little bit more intense during the contraction, extra stimulus put in, kind of bypassing the sensations that are being perceived as nocivic otherwise. Or we could do the noxious stimuli theory, where we are in between contractions and doing more intense, deeper massage to help get some endorphins released already. So those endorphins are on board by the time that next contraction comes on. That one's a little bit more mean, I like to think, but is beneficial and can help from that endorphin release standpoint. So, two options there. Depends on what the person wants. Sometimes people think they're going to want one thing in labor, and then labor happens and they actually like don't want to be touched at all. So, just knowing that there are options, there are tools in the toolbox for patient, for their support team to help with that pain management. And then finally, breath work. We mentioned breath work and relaxation as a component piece. So relaxation is what we really want to hone in on in labor, and breath work really helps us kind of settle into that. So helps us stay in that parasympathetic, relaxed state rather than transitioning into that fight or flight response. The key with breath work is we're not necessarily using breath work from like a meditative block all pain out standpoint. Earlier, I discussed like that pain-free birth movement is still emphasizing a pain-free birth, which is still kind of letting go of the piece of the puzzle that pain can be productive in labor. So rather than we are meditating through to eliminate pain, it is more like we are using breath work maybe as a meditative way to manage pain, to minimize that pain and to accept that pain. Finally, mindset is huge here. I think preparing for labor for unmedicated or medicated even labor, the biggest piece of the puzzle is the mental side, and that side gets left behind very, very often. We do all of these things to prepare physically. We talk about relaxation of the pelvic floor, we talk about perineal massage, and then we never really talk about that mindset piece. In particular, if somebody is planning on trying to do an unmedicated labor, understanding the key piece that pain is productive can completely reframe the experience. Having the mindset or the mantra in your mind that every wave of pain is a step closer to meeting my baby can be really helpful in managing that increasing intensity and frequency as we progress along in labor. Contractions start getting closer together, things feel a little bit harder to manage. Every single one of those is one more step closer towards getting to meet baby. And then finally, we as PTs understand this, but making sure that our patients understand that pain does not equal damage. Having pain does not mean that there is something wrong. In particular, in the birth process, we expect that there is going to be pain. If we can reframe that to expect that pain and know how to manage that pain within our realm of capabilities, we can completely transform the experience of birth, whether that is through a medicated or unmedicated delivery. I want to wrap this up with just like a kind of disclaimer or caveat. I'm not saying that everybody should have an unmedicated delivery. I've had several patients. I have a lot of friends personally that have zero interest in unmedicated delivery at all and want to have an epidural as soon as their labor starts because they don't want to have any pain in the process. And that is completely okay. As pelvic PTs, it is our role to come alongside our patients and support them in whatever their birth journey is for them and whatever that goal looks like. So while all of this is incredibly important to educate on, and we can scream from the rooftops that pain can be productive and can be an important piece of the puzzle, it does not discount somebody else who does not want to experience that pain in their labor journey. So understand that our role as providers is always, always going to be to come alongside our patients and provide education and support them in the ways that they choose to be supported or that they need in their specific labor journey. If you guys are interested in learning more about birth prep, we talk quite a bit about birth prep in our L2 course. We are done with courses for 2025, so you can jump into our courses in January for our L1 and our L2 cohorts, and then hop in for live courses. We have so many live courses between now and the end of the year. So hop onto the website, join in one of those live courses. We are going to be all over the country, North Carolina, Texas, So yeah, hop in, find the location that works best for you. If 2024 isn't your year for whatever reason, too much cramming in at the end of the year, look at our 2025 courses. We have, I think, 6 already listed online for 2025. So a lot of really wonderful opportunities to catch us on the road in 2025. I hope you guys have a fantastic Monday. Thanks for joining me this morning to chat about pain. Bye.